Alright, if I asked you the question, what would you change about Honkai Star Rail, what would you come up with? Maybe you would think something along the lines of changing the gameplay so that it moves away from the 3-button style that it has now. Or maybe you change up the meta so that it's constantly in a state of flux and the game feels more chaotic. Or maybe you prefer it be more stable so that a lot of things are viable at the same time. Or maybe you're someone that just doesn't care for the meta, so what you would like to change is the gacha so that it's easier for you to get your new anime wife or whatever. Or, maybe you just like to delete the game entirely. Regardless of what you would like to change, I'm sure that each and every answer from each and every different person would be pretty different from each other. So, as we're starting a new year and getting closer and closer to the release of 4.0, I figured it'd be a neat idea to simply just ask you guys and try to get a pulse on what the community is feeling about the game right now. So I did just that and asked you guys what you would want to change, and today I'd like to go through some of those responses and also give my personal thoughts on them. Maybe you'll have your own ideas after hearing some in this video, or, maybe you'll end up disagreeing with some of them. So let's get started. I think it goes without saying that there are definitely some disgruntled players in the HSR community for one reason or another, so let's go through those first. Remove the game, get a good dev, fire the writers, remove the gacha, let me my day. Wait a minute, that one's kind of based. Change the game to a new game, make polling cost nothing, slap the devs, go back to the 7 main paths. Does he know? And lastly, removes Irene. I think it's pretty safe to say that there's quite a few passionate people about this game, but those are definitely a bit more of jokey type answers, so let's go for a more serious one now. For the record, I'll be paraphrasing a little bit, but you can read their comments for yourself as they'll be on screen. Genshu says, if they can't change the writers, I would like to see a better story presentation, specifically using the 3D space they have, showing more POV shots, and using different camera angles. And personally, I found this comment pretty interesting because it's actually something that we know Hoyo can do if they really want to. I don't know if any of you remember at this point because it's been quite a while, but that was actually something they did back in the Finon patch with 3.4. Instead of having us standing in a circle and watching things happen, or even having us manually control characters through the story in different environments, there were a few scenes, particularly in the duels with the other Chrysos heirs, where they did actually use different camera angles. This was something that really stuck out to me back then because their 3D space and the different environments they create just aren't something that I feel they take advantage of all that often, and I really do think that they could do so a hell of a lot more often. Like, people make jokes that HSR is basically like playing a visual novel, but really, without Hoyo using these kinds of presentation techniques more often, personally, I don't really consider it to be that much of a joke. Like, they have a 3D world, and there are some genuinely beautiful set pieces throughout the game, yet honestly, for the most part, only small sections of them are actually used for the characters, and the rest we might see every now and then in a short panning shot of the area or something like that. I really do think that Hoyo could take some notes from games that know what environmental storytelling is, for example like Stray or even the Bioshock series, because when you have a giant open space and nothing in it for players to interact with, well, the player might as well just be in an empty box, or like I said earlier, it might as well just actually be a visual novel at that point. Like I said earlier, we know they can do it. They did it in 3.4, so there is definitely a lot of room for Hoyo to continue to do that and improve on the way that they tell their stories. As we go into a new region with the upcoming 4.0 update with supposedly higher graphical requirements, I guess all we can do is hope that it might be changing, but we'll just have to wait and see. On to the next question. Stone Midori says, I would like to see more side-grade characters like what Moze and Hunt March did for the follow-up archetype. Characters functioning similarly to each other isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as their design or their story make up for it. When there are other options, choices let you go for characters you like instead of being forced to pick up units that you might not like just to build an actual archetype. At least personally, I think what this comment really boils down to just goes to the fact that we simply do not get 4 stars anymore. I have to say that I really dislike the fact that we don't get any because at least in my eyes, the rare free 5 stars that we get don't really make up for the hole that the lack of the 4 stars leaves in most people's rosters. Like, yeah, Dan Heng is undoubtedly a great unit, but there's other sustains in the game. I know at least personally I was still using Aventuring to clear content literally a week before Dan released because I needed him for the night stages in the very first Anomaly Arbitration. And yeah, Archer is a fantastic unit, but at the end of the day, he's a DPS, and there is a boatload of those in the game. Neither of those units are particularly game-changing for accounts unless the account didn't have those archetypes of units to begin with, and therefore, in my opinion, they don't really fill the void of the 4 stars. At least personally, I'd actually argue that we need not only more 4 stars, but honestly, even lower rarity units wouldn't be a bad thing, but that's a whole other discussion. Overall, I would say that I pretty much entirely agree with what Stone Midori said. At the very least, even if we don't get 4 stars coming back into the game, I do think we should absolutely start getting more variety in the options that are available. Like, if you don't have Hyoscene, for example, but you want to play the HP meta units, I mean, what else do you have? Let's be real here, there's not really a whole lot, which is why there should be some other options to fill that role too, but I don't really have high hopes that'll change. Let me look for another question here. Oh, this is a good one. Rexcellent Red says, I think it would be cool to do seasonal buffs, like maybe for one patch some characters get new abilities, and then in the next it would be a different set of characters. This comment is kind of funny to me because this is actually something I talked about way back when I first started making content on YouTube. The 5th video that I ever made is literally titled, Would Seasonal Content Be Good? And honestly, if you ask me right now, I still think it would be. I have always been a fan of the concept of seasons, as at least from what I've experienced, they usually come with a slew of changes and new content and stuff like that, all themed around whatever is related to that season. Like, let me give you an example. Imagine this. Season 1 starts and it's called the Bellabog season or something. With just the name of the season alone, you can already get an idea of what's coming in it, but it also actually means that we would probably be going back to that region and there could actually be a real purpose behind going back to it. Like, at least personally, I've always had the headcanon that the Astral Express actually does revisit older planets instead of just, going there once and never returning, but at least in gameplay, that's something that we literally almost never see. I mean, think about it. When was the last time that our characters actually stepped foot on Bellabog? What about the Luofu? I mean, it's literally been years for some of them, and there's just so many opportunities there for something to happen that would give us a reason to. Like, on a simple level, you could look at it like, okay, this will be the season that Bellabog characters get some buffs or whatever. But there are so many layers to seasonal content like this that really, from that point on, the only limiting factor of the season would be the devs' creativity. I think back in my original video discussing this, I mentioned something along the lines of, what if there was a crisis in Bellabog for that season that required our help as the Astral Express to fix? Specifically, I said something like a gas leak or whatever, but let's be real here, there is probably a lot better option to choose from in terms of a crisis that we would have to get involved in. Like, what if there was a short story where while exploring the permafrost around the city, the Silvermane guards uncover some ancient being or whatever, and then there you go, you've got a story to follow, a small new region to explore being the permafrost, and a new boss to fight at the end of it. Stuff like this would be such a good way to bring back actually meaningful events like we had back when the game launched during 1.x. I mean, think about it. Without Ethereum Wars, we wouldn't have the old weapon testing ground. Without the ghost hunting event, we wouldn't have the Fixstrol Gardens. Anyway, but I'm sure you get the idea, right? I really do miss those old events, and I think something like seasonal content would be an absolutely fantastic way of bringing that back, and that's not even mentioning that it would be a great way to bring characters that aren't in the meta back into it, at least temporarily through some kind of seasonal buffing system, so I definitely have to say that I agree with Rexcellent Red here. Alright, so on to the next one. Both Shadesbird and Not Sawaluna say, we need more Novaflares, and oh boy, this is one that I have a lot to say about, so let's go. For those of you that don't know much about me, first of all, hi, I'm Fleur. But in seriousness, prior to playing any Hoyo game at all, I played 2 other gacha games called FGO and Arknights. While I don't play Arknights anymore, both it and FGO had very robust systems in their game that let them buff characters whenever they wanted. And as a result of that, going into Hoyo games where characters basically never got buffed until this past year, it was genuinely kind of foreign to me. Like in the previous games I played, having unusable characters was pretty much unheard of simply because of the fact that if they were underperforming, then all they would need is a simple buff through an established game system and they could potentially be right back on top of whatever meta was in the game at the time. Like, I specifically can think of multiple different scenarios in FGO, for example, where characters that were previously considered like just okay ended up literally becoming the highest damaging character in the entire game for a period of time after they got their buffs. So, suffice to say, back when HSR finally had their Novaflare system announced back at the 2nd anniversary, I was pretty damn excited for the potential that it could bring to the game in terms of revitalizing its old characters. But, for those of you that haven't really been paying attention to the system since it was added, it's been over 6 months at this point since the first batch of Novaflares were released, obviously even longer since the announcement of them, and furthermore, the second batch of them is only for 2 characters releasing in 4.0. And I think it goes without saying that that is a pretty long time to go with only 6 total characters getting buffed, when meanwhile there's, let me check. Oh right, over 80 characters in the entire game. That is like 7% of the entire cast or something, and honestly, that is ridiculous. Like, let's be real here, there are so many different characters in this game that need buffs, both 4 and 5-star alike, and it is really a shame that it's taking Hoyo so long to actually release the different Novaflares. Like, I have racked my brain trying to figure out what is the reason behind them doing it so slowly, and the only thing that I can come up with is that it might be harder for them to shield the new Path battleship if older characters are still usable, but honestly, in my eyes, even that logic doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I talked about it earlier in this video, but we really don't get 4 stars at all anymore, right? Well, you know what would help alleviate that problem? What if the 4 stars we actually have were, usable? That might be a crazy thought, I know. Like, I would love to be able to actually use some of them because there are a lot of cool characters that unfortunately got screwed simply by being lower rarity, and if they did end up getting buffed so that they could actually have functional kits, then that would help with so many different things throughout the game. I mean, think about it, we would have more variety, there would be less of a need or desire for new 4 stars, people could actually play older characters that they might like, and Hoyo wouldn't have to design an entirely new set of characters just to slap a 4-star logo on them. There is genuinely no downside here for players and Hoyo alike, and it's kinda disappointing that Hoyo hasn't realized that yet. What's more sad though in my opinion is that even if Hoyo truly does want to write out 4 stars and just never interact with them again, there's genuinely so many different 5 stars that could use buffs too. I mean, there's the whole rest of the 1.0 cast that hasn't been buffed yet, like Argenti and Amibiter Dan Hang and Dr. Ratio, not to mention all the standard characters, but there's also a bunch from 2.0 including the literal only emanator from the entire patch cycle with Acheron. And let's be honest here, you could even argue that some of the 3.x characters too, like Ceredra for example, should be buffed due to how ungodly niche she is. I really, truly do hope that the fact that Hoyo randomly drops Sparkle and Black Swan's Novaflares means that they're going to start doing them more often, because this is a system that undoubtedly needs more development overall. Time will tell though, and we'll just have to wait and see. On to another topic that's pretty close to my heart. Kurt Kaiser, Syncophrenia, sorry about that, and Taiki11 all say that they want the 50-50 system removed from the game. The individual ideas between the 3 of them were slightly different, but the concept as a whole is one that I wholeheartedly agree with. If I can go on my soapbox for a little bit here, it is genuinely soul-crushing to open up a banner and see that character that you've been really waiting for. You start rolling, you get all the way to pity, you hit your 5-star, and then you get a standard character. And then what's even worse is when you then have to go all the way to pity again just to guarantee them, and with the pull income in Hoyo games, that's usually 2 or more patches of saving down the drain for just one character. Like, let me show you something here. Around the start of Natlin and Genshin Impact, I went ahead and uploaded my pulls to one of those tracker websites. Like, I knew my 50-50 luck was never great, but at least in that game, I learned that it might as well have not even been 50-50 rates, because in reality, I won my 50-50s less than 30% of the time. And let me tell you, that does not feel great. What makes it more frustrating though is that unlike Genshin, where for the most part you can use a large majority of the characters, in a game like HSR where its meta shifts relatively frequently, and when it shifts it gets hard chilled, I personally think that losing your 50-50 can kind of be a major game changer for your account. Like, what if you're someone that was trying to build the Remembrance battleship, right? You get your cast, you pick up Evernight, but then one of the most pivotal units like Hyacine, well, that's the one you lost your 50-50 on. I mean, you're screwed at that point, and sure, you could have just chosen better, or not been greedy and stupid, or just been more lucky or whatever, but at the end of the day, the result is the same. You're missing the pivotal unit for that battleship, and that's just never going to be fun for the player. I will say, like Stone Midori said in that question earlier in this video, if there were other options besides Hyacine or whatever unit you might have lost to or missed out on, then that would certainly alleviate the problem, but at least in my eyes, that's more like slapping a band-aid on the situation rather than actually solving it. Personally, I have always been a fan of some kind of guarantee system, even if it ends up costing more to hit your first 5-star guarantee. For example, if it takes 160 pulls to guarantee a unit in Hoyo's current system, then an actual guarantee system without 50-50s would put it somewhere at 110 to 120 pulls, and then you just, get the character. Sure, it technically could end up being more expensive if you were someone that just always won your 50-50s prior to a system change like that, but on the other hand, it puts a hard limit in for the people that aren't so lucky, for example like myself in Genshin. And to be clear, just simply removing the 50-50 isn't necessarily the only solution to make the gacha feel better. There could also be something like a Spark system like Nikke has, where you get tickets for each roll you do, and then you can spend those tickets to directly buy any character you want as long as they're on the banner. Or if Hoyo wanted to stick more to what they already know, they could copy the Capturing Radiant system from Genshin, where after you lose 2 50-50s, your chances of winning increase, but that's just 2 random options off the top of my head. There are plenty of ways the gacha could be improved, especially so in Hoyo games, and I really do hope that as more gachas release over the next year or so, they come with improved systems that get us away from the soul-crushing feel of losing your 50-50. While not perfect, Arknight's Enfield recently released, and they've got a unique gacha system of their own, so maybe some of the other games can take some notes. Hoyo definitely should. So here we go with one more change. Deadfish100 says, I'd like more things to obtain outside of the gacha. I'm not entirely certain if what I'm about to say goes down the same line of thinking that they intended, but nonetheless this is what came to mind when I read the response. Ages ago, I released a video titled Honkai Star Rail Needs to Give Players Goals. In that video, what I discussed was the idea that once you obtain a character and you spend some time building them, and maybe you use them in a few different endgame environments, there's really not a whole lot that you can actually do with them. Seeing as this game is basically entirely about the characters, and they're also the vast majority of the content offered through the game, I personally think that that's just really unfortunate. So, as a result, something that I think would be awesome for these kinds of games, honestly not even just Star Rail specifically, is having something for players to go after, or like I said in that older video, giving players some kind of goal to chase. For example, right now, apart from getting Stellar Jade, what reason do you actually have to explore the HSR maps? I mean, sure, you could argue that you really love seeing the environments or whatever, but other than that, let's be real, there is basically nothing. So what if there was something that you actually could get? Like, why not make it so that if you collect every single chest on a planet, you get a phone wallpaper for that planet? Or why not make it so that if you collect every single nymph on Amphorius, instead of just giving you a chest at the end of it, you get a nice profile picture? Taking it a step further, what if there was a new NPC on each planet that offered you daily tasks to do, and after doing a certain amount of them, you could get some kind of weapon skin, for example? Like, these are all super basic things to add to the game, but it also would give each and every player that wants more stuff to do the opportunity to, actually do more stuff. For me, at least right now, I would say that Honkai Star Rail is a pretty solid game when there's actually stuff to do, but I feel that actually having that stuff in each patch is something that the game severely lacks. Now, I will say granted, that's mostly due to them releasing less events and overworld quests and stuff like that, but I digress, this is just a different way of filling the void that those things left behind. Hopefully as we go into a new region with 4.x, we can get some more stuff to do apart from just building our characters to throw them at a new endgame over and over again, but with the rush to update things and then also the delay, we'll just have to see. I think I'll make this the last one, so here we go with the Rogue Spectre saying, I'd like it if companion missions were to return so that we can get more individual character development and improve the pacing of the story. Personally, this is something that I heavily agree with, because at least since they stopped doing them way back in 2.1, I feel that some characters simply don't get developed enough, or they only get developed in specific ways, and therefore it actually can be difficult to get attached to them. For me, the example that I always give when talking about this sort of stuff is Maide. While he was a great character and I did love his role in the Amphorius story and he also had a very impactful role, I personally would have loved to see more about him and how he interacts with the other Chrysos heirs and stuff outside of things directly related to that main story. For example, there's a ton of memes and jokes and stuff about Phainon and Maide's yaoi relationship and their bath time activities. But in-game, we didn't really see that kind of stuff. Like, there was one scene maybe, but really not a whole lot apart from that. Obviously, that's just one example, but there are plenty of other characters that could have been developed a lot more had they had their own individual quest, and it's something that I really miss as I like getting attached to the different characters. Alongside that, I do have to say that making companion missions separate from the main story quest again would definitely solve another problem that people have had, particularly since Amphorius started. I'm not sure if anyone needs a reminder here, but the entire Amphorius story from start to finish was over 50 hours long, and it definitely didn't need to be. Personally, I think that had there been companion missions, some of the fluff that was throughout the story definitely could have been toned down and shoved into those companion missions, which would then solve a twofold problem. For one, let's say the companion mission would have been about Tribby. People that don't care about Tribby could completely skip that companion mission as it would be optional content, and the lack of the story being bloated by those character-specific stories would allow the main content to be toned down so it's not, 50 hours. Alternatively, if for some reason Hoyo was actually aiming for the main story to be 50 hours long, they could use the newfound space that removing the fluff would provide to develop some of the different plotlines more. I mean, let's be real here, some of the mini arcs throughout Amphorius were definitely a bit rushed, and I think that if they were given more space to be fleshed out, then the story could have been in a much more interesting place overall. For me specifically, I feel that the 3.6 storyline would definitely be a place where there could have been more, but that's just me. Overall, I definitely do think that there is a decent amount of reason to bring these companion missions back, but I mean, I guess we don't have Hoyo's data that says who was and wasn't doing those quests. I mean, hell, for all we know, not that many people did, and that's why they removed them, but regardless, I personally will always advocate for them to come back. To wrap up here, thank you to everyone that submitted comments, even if I didn't end up getting to them in this video. This actually ended up being really fun to respond to, and I might do this again in the future. So, if you guys have some thoughts of your own on what you'd like to change with Star Rail as we enter a new patch cycle, please feel free to let me know down in the comments below, or join my Discord link down in the description to talk with me about it. As always, thank you so much for watching, subscribe, and if you haven't already, maybe give the videos a shot too.